All right, let's dive into a really foundational question. How can we, as flawed, imperfect people, ever hope to connect with a perfectly holy God? It's a huge question, right? Well, the Bible's answer is an incredible story that starts at the base of this terrifying mountain, involves a promise that gets broken, and ends with, well, with the arrival of the perfect mediator.
So our story really kicks off right here at the foot of Mount Sinai. And you got to picture the scene. It is intense. We're talking thunder, lightning, smoke everywhere, this deafening trumpet blast. The people of Israel are just completely terrified by God's raw presence. So much so that they basically beg their leader, Moses, look, you go talk to God for us. If he speaks to us directly, we're done for. We'll die. Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea, a terrifying request. And you have to understand, this reaction at the mountain, it's not just them being jumpy or startled. No, this reveals something so much deeper, this fundamental, massive gap between us and God.
So why were they so afraid? I mean, what was really going on here? Was it just, a scary storm with some loud noises? Or was something much, much deeper happening in that moment?
And here's the thing, their fear was totally justified. They got it. On an instinctive level, they understood the core problem here. The sheer, raw holiness of God is it's unbearable. It's actually fatal for imperfect people. They knew they couldn't survive that direct contact. And in that moment, they realized they desperately needed someone, a go-between, to stand in that dangerous gap for them. So this need for a go-between leads to the first solution, which we can think of as a temporary fix. It involves a temporary mediator and a temporary agreement. This whole system is what the Bible calls the Old Covenant, and it was the first real attempt to bridge that gap.
So what exactly is a mediator? Well, it's pretty simple. It's someone who stands in the middle, trying to bring two sides together. And the very first person to officially step into this role for Israel was Moses. He was the guy who would go up the mountain, talk with God, and then come back down and relay the message to everyone else.
And there's this incredible story with the stone tablets that shows just how vital this role was. You see, the first time Moses comes down the mountain with the law, he finds the people are already messing up, worshiping a golden calf. And in his anger, he smashes the tablets. The law, delivered without a mediator's successful plea for the people, it's broken. But then it's only after Moses goes back and intercedes, he literally pleads with God to forgive them, that he gets a second set of tablets. And this set is preserved. The takeaway here is huge. God's law requires a mediator to even survive among the people. But let's be clear, this whole system had some serious built-in limits. For one, this first covenant was based on the blood of animal sacrifices. The law itself was written on something external, on stone tablets. So it was amazing at one thing, showing people the standard. It revealed their sin perfectly. But it gave them absolutely zero internal power to actually overcome it. In fact, the New Testament calls it a ministry of condemnation or death. Why? Because all it could really do was prove how much you failed, essentially sentencing you to death. Which brings us to our next part, the promised mediator. Because this temporary system, it was never meant to be the final answer. It was always pointing forward to something much more permanent. This wasn't some plan B. The solution was promised and hinted at long, long before it ever happened.
I mean, get this. Moses himself, the original mediator, told the people, hey, one day God is going to raise up a prophet like me, and he's the one you need to listen to. So even the first mediator was pointing forward to a future, better one. And you might be asking, why was a better mediator even needed? Well, here's the core issue. A created being, like Moses, could never perfectly bridge that infinite gap between the Creator and his creation. It's just not possible. The only one who could truly stand in the middle and represent both sides perfectly would have to be, somehow, both fully God and fully man. And when you actually lay these two covenants side by side, the upgrade is just staggering. It's a total game changer. Look at this. The mediator goes from Moses, a creature, to Jesus, the Creator. The foundation goes from the blood of animals to God's own blood. The law moves from being written on stone tablets to being written on the human heart. And the result? It flips completely, from condemnation and death to justification and life. It's a total reversal. So this new mediator, Jesus, he didn't just show up with a slightly revised contract. No, he started something completely different, an agreement that works on an entirely new level. This is a covenant of the heart.
Okay, think about it like this. The law on stone, that's external. It's like a perfect mirror. It's great at showing you the dirt on your face, but it gives you absolutely no power to wash it off. All it can do is condemn you for being dirty. But the law written on the heart, that's internal. That's a total transformation where the Holy Spirit literally writes God's principles inside of you, giving you the power and the desire to obey from the inside out. And this new deal is only possible because its foundation is infinitely more powerful. It's not based on the life of an animal anymore. It's based on the very life of the mediator himself, Jesus, given as a sacrifice. And that's what provides not just, a blueprint for how to change, but the actual forgiveness and the real power to change. All right, so let's get to the bottom line here. What's the ultimate outcome of all this new covenant with this perfect mediator? Well, it's nothing short of a complete reversal from death to life. And this next point is absolutely crucial. We cannot miss this. The law itself, God's perfect standard of how to love Him and love others, was never the problem. It was always perfect. It didn't need to be fixed or updated. The problem was us. It was our inability to keep it. So the change that needed to happen wasn't in the law. It was in the person. And what that means is that the exact same law can function in two totally opposite ways. For someone who's under that old system, trying to obey in their own strength, the law only brings condemnation. It brings a sentence of death. But for someone who's been transformed and empowered by the Holy Spirit under the new covenant, that very same law becomes a pathway to life. It really all boils down to this incredible reversal. The commandment that once sentenced you to death now somehow begins to sentence you to life. The very thing that proved you were guilty now becomes the proof that you've been made alive. So as we wrap this up, that's the question I want to leave you with. The law didn't change. The person did. The law, God's perfect standard, stayed exactly the same. But the person was radically transformed. And the new covenant gives us the answer to the ultimate question. What is the source of that change?